Welcome back to our course on Excel 2013. In this section we're going to look at some of the alternative file types that can be accommodated in Excel 2013. Primarily we're going to look at different formats, different file types for saving workbook data. Let's suppose that I want to save the content of this particular workbook for somebody to use who doesn't have the current version of Excel. Excel 2013 uses the same format that's been in use since Excel 2007. So the last three versions of Microsoft Excel have used the same format. If I wanted to pass this workbook on to somebody who had an earlier version, if I click on File, go into Backstage View, do a Save As, I'm going to choose Computer. Let's suppose I'm going to use the same folder that I've got the other example files in. Under Save As Type down here, default is Excel Workbook star.xlsx, although you can actually change that default in the Excel options. And then there's a long drop down. In fact, it's such a long list that you'll fall off the bottom of the page here. But one of the options there, the fourth one down usually, is this one. Excel 97 to 2003 workbook star.xls. This is the Excel format that was in use before the current format. So somebody with an older version of Excel, either 97, XP 2000 or 2003, would use that format. And if you save this workbook in that format, they should be able to open it just fine. One word of warning there, and that is that sometimes some of the content in a newer Excel workbook will not be compatible with an older format. So if a new feature has been introduced and it wasn't in the older version of Excel, then that may not work. And Excel either will warn you about that or will produce something where the person opening it in the older version of Excel may not get the full effect of what you've done. Now, in addition to that format, there is a format from Excel versions 5.0 to 95 that you can also still save a workbook in for somebody with an even older version of Excel. Although I think the number of people that are using versions of Excel of 95 or older is probably quite a small number nowadays. So that's how you would accommodate older versions of Excel. I mentioned much earlier on in the course that you can create your own templates. We did use a template or two earlier on. It's outside the scope of this course to create your own templates, but if you do, you would save those using a specific format and file extension as well. Again, we'll go to the Save As Type list now, about 8 items down there. Excel template star.xltx. That's the format you would use to save a workbook as a template. And further up the list, it's normally the second item on the list. There's also Excel macro enabled workbook. Again, outside this course, but if you study VBA and writing macros in Excel, you would need to save your workbook in a particular format that accommodates including macros, actual program code you've written yourself. And the format for that type is XLSM. Now, there are a number of other formats there. One of them, for example, is saving as a single file web page, an MHT file, or saving as a web page, an HTML file. So there are many other formats, but there are two in particular, or I should say three really in particular, that I'd like to look at next in this section. Now, so far when we've been looking at file types, we've been looking at saving Excel file types. So primarily for people that have a copy of Excel, maybe an older copy of Excel, and at the different types of Excel workbooks, so workbooks, templates, macro enabled workbooks, etc. What if we want to supply a copy of a workbook to somebody who doesn't actually have Microsoft Excel installed? So you want to give somebody a copy of your data, in this case the opening times, but they don't have Microsoft Excel. Well, one very flexible way of doing that is to provide somebody with a PDF file. PDF, portable document format, the Adobe standard, which is pretty much the standard for interchanging files in a printable, readable form. is accommodated within Excel 2013, and you can quite simply save a workbook in PDF format. Now there are some quite serious restrictions on this. You will not be able to save the actual calculations, formulae, function side of things. It won't be a working workbook in PDF format. It'll really be more a printout of the workbook. But in many cases that may be all that you need. So if I go into the Save As Type drop down and go down, it's a long way down, it's off the bottom of the screen here, but one of the options is PDF. I can then choose options. Now let me click on the options button here and look at the options to go with PDF. First of all, do I want to do all pages or a range of pages? Let's say all pages. Do I want to publish what I've selected cells, the entire workbook, or perhaps just the active sheet? Let's say the entire workbook. And do I want to include the non-printing information such as document properties, document structure, tags for accessibility, etc. And one of the PDF options is this ISO option here. Now I'm going to stick with the options as they are there, click on OK, and then the other area I've got optimized for standard for publishing online and printing, or do I want minimum size? If I'm going to publish this online, probably make it a downloadable PDF file, do I want to make it as small as possible? I'll stick with standard. There's another option here, open file after publishing. I'm going to uncheck that. And my file has now been saved as a PDF file. Let's open up the PDF file and see what it looks like. And what you get is a PDF document. On the first page we have the opening hours for 2013, and then bear in mind that this had 2 sheets in this workbook. If I scroll down, you'll see on the second page it says page 2 of 2, and then there are the opening hours for 2014. Now that is effectively a sort of printout really of the contents of my workbook, available in PDF format. Now it's also possible to save a file in the Microsoft equivalent of the PDF format, which is the XPS format. So if you want to give somebody a copy of your data to look at, possibly the charts you've generated from it to look at, then PDF format is a good option, as is the Microsoft XPS format. What if you wanted to give somebody data that they could actually work on and they didn't necessarily have Microsoft Excel? One of the most common ways of interchanging large amounts of data is using what's called CSV format. CSV stands for comma separated values. In fact, comma separated values is a little bit of a misnomer because it's possible to format a CSV file in many different ways. But if I use the generic term CSV format, what you can do with CSV format is to export data in a way that other people can import into their spreadsheet programs, maybe spreadsheet programs that aren't Microsoft Excel. The other advantage of CSV format is that you can import it into many, or in fact most, database programs as well. So CSV format is a very good format for interchanging data that is actually going to be processed as data, rather than just read or charts looked at, for instance, which you might use PDF format for. So let's save this in CSV format. So it's pretty straightforward. Go into Save As, go down to CSV, comma delimited value, comma separated values, and pretty much it's as simple as that. So having selected CSV format, click on Save, and one of the things to note when you do this is that you get this message from Microsoft Excel. The selected file type does not support workbooks that contain multiple sheets. To save only the active sheet, click OK. To save all sheets, save them individually using a different file name for each. That's an important point about CSV format. You need to do each sheet as a separate file. So we'll click on OK. Another common warning, some features in your workbook might be lost if you save it as CSV. Do you want to keep using that format? Yes. So for instance, formatting information will not be kept in CSV format. Click on Yes. And the CSV format is saved. Let's have a look at what the file actually looks like. Now if you open up the CSV file that was generated by that save, you get this. There is no formatting, colouring, bordering information at all. It's just really the text that's in the first of the worksheets, and the commas indicate the different columns on the worksheet. So this is saying on the first row it says opening hours, comma, then nothing, comma, then nothing, then comma, then nothing, then, and then so on. The second row has got an empty cell, then a comma, then it says open, comma, then it says close, comma. So the commas are basically stepping you through the columns. And the other important point about CSV is that it's a very good format of data to import into Microsoft Excel. So given a CSV file, it will be very straightforward to input a file like this to create a worksheet. Now clearly we wouldn't be able to import the formatting information, but in terms of the data itself, it's a pretty straightforward format to work with. So that's it for this section. We've looked at different Excel file types, including types that are used for older versions of Excel and for particular types of workbook like macro-enabled workbooks. But we've also looked at ways of saving your workbooks in formats that people without Microsoft Excel can access, either PDF so that they can look at the data, or CSV format where they can take the data and import it into their own spreadsheet program or database. I'll see you in the next section.